David asked, "Is there anyone left of the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness for Jonah's sake?" Now there was a servant of Saul's household named Ziba. They summoned him to appear before David, and the king said to him, "Are you Ziba?" "At your service," he replied. The king asked, "Is there no one still alive from the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness?" Ziba answered the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan. He is lame in both feet." "Where is he?" the king asked. Ziba answered, "He is at the house of Machir, son of Amiel, in Lodabar." So David had him brought from Lodabar, from the house of Machir, son of Amiel. When Mepho- when Mephibosheth, son of David, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay him honor. "David, Mephibosheth, at your service," he replied. "Don't be afraid," David said, "for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table." Mephiz, Mephibosheth bowed down and said, Is your servant that I should notice a dead dog? What is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me?" Then the king summoned Ziba, Saul's steward, and said to him, "I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul and his family. You and your sons and your servants are to farm the land for him and bring in the crops so that your master's grandson will be provided for. And Mephibosheth, grandson of your master, will always eat at my table." Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, Your servant will do whatever my lord the king commands his servant to do." So Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's sons. Mephibosheth had a young son named Micah, and all the member of Ziba's households were servants of Mephibosheth. And Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem because he always ate at the king's table, for he was lame in both feet. That is 2 Samuel 9. And the question it has me pondering today is, what's missing one in my business that I have stopped noticing? The idea being, what missing person am I not looking for in our business, or what person have I stopped looking for? Just to recap 2 Samuel 9, because it's really important. I think that, like anything, you can choose to believe. I think I read once that Sam Harris said you can read a cookbook and try to get your religion from that. That's fine, except a cookbook can't actually hold up under any real stress test, where I believe that the Bible does. I believe it's the word of God, and I think it's very instructful as a business owner for me. In fact, that's my adventure this year, is to use the Bible as scaffolding for me as a business owner to understand what God says about me, what he says about me and the position that I'm in, and how I can see that reflected in the life of Jesus. And then that becomes the example that I try to bear out every single day. So here's what happened. Saul is dead. Jonathan was Saul's son. David and Jonathan were best pals. David wants to do something great for Jonathan's family. So he finds his son and says, Look, I'll take care of you and show you kindness, and provided for him. And it's this whole idea that, back in ancient times when you were victorious, I mean, David basically took the spot that the previous king Saul had. And normally you go and look to slay the entire family line of the king that came before you, so that no one in the family line can kind of mess up your legacy, or mess up what it is you're trying to do. But instead, what David does is he actually goes out and seeks someone from the previous family line to show them kindness because of the relationship that he enjoyed with Jonathan, which was someone from that previous family line. But I think it has kind of a bigger purpose or bigger meaning than that for me as a business owner. It's this idea that even though the world will give you one way to approach something, and it could look like, hey, let's go and annihilate our competition, or let's go and smoke everybody else in the market, or let's become number one for the sake of number one. Again, I think there is a measure of importance in all of those things. However, I think there's also a way to still be merciful, to show kindness, to, if you believe that God is in charge of the outcome and you're in charge of doing the work to steward the resources and the people that God has put into your care, then really you shouldn't care about any of that other stuff of having your pride and your ego dictate that you're going to go and annihilate your competition or try to get rid of your competition. What I see in this particular passage, I see that David sought out. It was at his initiation that he the very first question, in fact, the very first question that he asks is there anyone left of the house of Saul, the previous king, to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake? And Jonathan was Saul's son. So still part of that family line. But he asked the question. He sought it out. He found someone that he knew, which was Zika, who was taking care, or Ziba, sorry, who was taking care of Jonathan's son. And he wanted to show God's kindness to this individual. It wasn't motivated by David wanting to scratch his own ego and satisfy his own pride. He wanted to show God's kindness. In fact, verse 3 says, the king asked, is there no one still alive from the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness? I like to believe that because David had witnessed God's kindness and he knew, I think to some extent, like I do, that really there's nothing incredibly special about me unto myself. I was made by God. I was put in the position that I'm in to lead people, including my family, and to know God's kindness creates within in me the desire to want to have other people experience God's kindness. And so as I reflect on this, I think of who or where am I seeking to help someone out in our company, in our team. I see in the life of Jesus that it was pretty clear with him. He sought out people. The quick examples that come to mind are Zacchaeus. He was a tax collector. And in those days, no one liked tax collectors because they were Jewish people collecting taxes from their own people. So you can look at Luke 19, 1 to 10, and Jesus singles out Zacchaeus and he goes and eats dinner with him and calls him out and says, hey, I'd like to come befriend you. John 4, 1 to 26 is the famous story of the woman at the well. Jesus goes and spends time with a Samaritan woman, which was very much not the thing to do, but he shows her kindness, he shows her mercy, and then calls out Matthew as an actual disciple. In Luke 5, 27, 28, you can see Jesus calling Matthew, who everyone else doesn't like, but he goes over, spends time with him, and ends up calling him to be a disciple and invests in him. So if David wanted to seek someone out specifically as a way to show God's kindness to them, if Jesus sought out specific people and had different reasons for why he was seeking them out, it causes me to consider, who am I speaking out and trying to get to know? Jesus spoke with the people, he got to know them. What am I doing to find people in our business that I can learn more about that might have some value or some contribution that isn't being recognized? Or how can I just, because of how good God's been to me, how can I extend that same courtesy to them? um, I think of two individuals that we hired many years ago who were new to Canada. They didn't come to the table with a lot, but within our business over the last couple of years, not only have they found a way to contribute enormously to our company, but they have risen up through their career path very, very quickly. It hasn't only earned them more income, it has earned them certainly more respect from the rest of the company. And it was a decision that we as a company had made many years ago to figure out how can we take anybody and make them successful at what we do. And if in making them successful means we're a stepping stone into another company, into another market, into something else, then so be it. We'll be grateful to get the people we get. And these two individuals have been with us for quite some time, and they're not kind of going anywhere. There are other people that we have helped who, it just doesn't always work out. You invest time and money into them, and it's not really reciprocated. And I think that the reason it doesn't kind of bend me out of shape at all is because it's not meant to be reciprocated. When I consider all of the mercy and grace that God has given to me, there's no possible way that I can look for someone else to reciprocate something to me. I simply want to serve and be able to, like David said, show God's kindness to somebody else. We in our business do weekly feedback, anonymous feedback from our team, so that we can understand where we're falling short of the mark. We have a pretty detailed career path tool that our workforce can log into and can kind of see where they are, where their hours are, what tasks they know how to do, which ones they don't know how to do, that's preventing them from moving forward. And that's all in an attempt to really get to know our team. But at the leadership level, at the ownership level, I too need to be reminded that much like Jesus sought out Zacchaeus, the woman at the well, Matthew, who am I seeking out? David, he sought out Jonathan's son to show God's kindness to him. And I think I'm called to do that as well. And so this passage today, 2 Samuel 9, really begs the question, how is our business helping people to transform their lives? How do we recognize people for their value and then serve them by removing friction in their life? And part of the answer to that question is we get to know them. We take the time to find the people on our team that are worth doing more than just coming alongside them as managers and as leaders. There's an opportunity for us to come alongside of them just because we're human. we're, we're in a position where, as leaders, if we believe the gospel message, if we believe what the Bible tells us about creation and how God created us and put us in a time and place to achieve his means, then we should be looking, I should be looking to reflect that out into a world that I think desperately needs that and can benefit from that. 2 Samuel 9 is a very important passage as business owners who are building or managing businesses and teams to be reminded of the fact that at the end of the day, we're just people doing things. And if we're in a position of leadership, the grace and mercy that God has shown to us should cause us to want to show that same grace and mercy to others. But more than that, I think it should cause us to strive and reach to try and find people that we can show that kindness and that mercy